what gets measured gets managed. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. In small businesses, there truly is not enough resources to get everything done. And so you have to say no, you have to be very focused on your goal, and you have to prioritize. You might see a lot more efficiency in the larger companies if they could really stop working on the 80%. And the only way that you can be a high-performing team is if you really take care of the people who are not performing.
Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. My name is Adam Hill. I am your host, and today we're going to talk about finance and a lot of things related to small business finance. Have you ever wondered when might be the right time to hire that fractional CFO or maybe go full-time on the CFO? Sometimes those are difficult questions, and a lot of times, even for small businesses, we don't even think about finance to the degree that we need to, especially in family businesses where our main priority is, well, focusing on the family and our employees and making sure that we're running an effective business. Of course, in order to do that, we need to start focusing more on finance and becoming more financially literate and hiring those people that do a great job with that. Which brings in my guest today. Cheryl Heller is somebody that I met recently through a collective group, and I really got a good feel for how she helps small businesses to help them really integrate financial knowledge and expertise into their business. Not only that, but consult them on strategic planning through a lot of her initiatives. Cheryl is a visionary co-founder of the Strategic Board Collective and the powerhouse behind Pillar One Consulting, bringing over 2 decades of executive experience to small business owners and as an advisor and fractional CFO. Additionally, as a partner at Clippership Ventures, she focuses on driving growth in the fintech and business technology sectors. With a distinguished career at Capital One and roles in insurance and public accounting, Cheryl excels in finance, operations, and HR, consistently leading transformative initiatives. Beyond her professional roles, Cheryl actively supports women's leadership initiatives and also volunteers at the Montgomery County Humane Society. Cheryl's holistic approach to life reflects in her business ethos, where she helps small businesses to succeed and thrive with confidence in their financial future. This sounds like something that we all need within our financial goals, within our family business. So please, I hope you get a lot of value and enjoy this episode with Cheryl Heller. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. I'm really excited you're here today. My guest today I met through a recent mastermind group or support group with regard to branding, and it got me thinking regarding how family businesses incorporate finance into their businesses a lot. I mean, my guest Cheryl Heller today, she is in that world of finance, in corporate finance. She's been in it for over 20 years. And she's worked with a variety of companies, and she primarily works with smaller businesses now and, many small businesses or family businesses. So I think that's a great overlap, and something that we don't often talk about in the family business world is how to manage, finance within that world now. I guess I'd like to start there, Cheryl, and just see, kind of talk a little bit about your history, where you came up and in terms of your executive leadership. I know you've got a lot of, you got a lot of credibility behind you, and I'd just love to hear, a little bit of your story.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about family businesses and finances and how they can go together. So my background is that I started in public accounting, spent a few years there, and went into financial services. And so I spent just over 20 years in a large financial services company. And I was involved in all aspects of the operations, from call center operations to running the finance team for the retail bank, and sort of everything in between, and really kind of learned all aspects of how businesses run, how processes should be set up, how to manage compliance type activities, how to deal with team issues and team building and all of those sorts of things. And then about 7 years ago, I left and started my own consulting business. And since then, I've been working with startups and small businesses, anywhere from we have an idea and we want to create a company and we don't know what to do with it, to companies that have been in business for 20 years and are making good money, but really are looking to take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I appreciate that context because, for a lot of businesses and family businesses in particular, we hear a lot of times, especially with this kind of baby boom exit from the world of business, and they're trying to maybe sell their business or get into retirement, and they're finding maybe they're not ready or they don't have the financial means to do what they wanted to do, and maybe they should have planned a little better. And it's heartbreaking to see a lot of that, but it also demonstrates that for those smaller businesses, we may not be doing enough to really have that strategic plan in place to prepare our finances to get there. So, what is it that we are doing wrong? And maybe that's the wrong kind of question, but what is it we can do better earlier to make sure that we set ourselves up for success as a small business?
Yeah, so I always like to say what gets measured gets managed. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I read that somewhere or if I just made it up myself, but you can't actually take care of what you don't know exists. And so the first step is to just get real clear on what do your financials look like. And I know a lot of people get nervous and are reluctant to really kind of dig into the financials and maybe keep everything in the old adage, keep it in the shoebox until you give it to your accountant to do your tax return. Right. That's not going to help you kind of grow to be to the place that you want to be. And so really, if you're looking at every month, what's coming in, what's going out, what are you spending your money on? What products are selling or services are selling most? Where can you double down? How can you make some tweaks to, get to the right customer with the right product? All of those things, if you take a look at those on a regular basis, then you can start to gather some data and understand the ebbs and flows of your business, and you can take that to decide how you want to move forward. So, for example, I'm working with one company where they, in the last year or so, kind of rebranded, they changed their product set, they created new product bundles and packages. And now that we've been out kind of in the market selling that for a while, we're kind of going back and saying, okay, out of the ones that aren't selling, is the pricing too high? Or is the package something that just nobody wants? And how can we think about packaging different segments of the product together so that it becomes a more attractive package? So I think there's always things that you can do to improve, but it needs to start with the data. You need to understand what's going on and what's true.
Yeah. What's a good, because I feel like, a lot of, I don't know, growing up in the family business world, but I see a lot within our own business and with outside businesses and things like that finance aspect, that kind of planning from the financial standpoint is an afterthought. We think of selling the product and just pushing it out there and sales forward and all of these things. And then we react, but we don't think about that. What should we, so what are some first steps that we can take if we're in that world and we're just getting started? Like how do we look at what we're reporting on and doing it the right way for the first couple steps, say?
Yeah, so I really like to start with, looking at your sales for the past, say, 3 years, right? Take all of that data and really scrub it down and look at not only what months had higher sales than others, so you can take an understanding of seasonality, but then also which products did better, and were some products better in some months and other products better in other months, and how did that all come together? And to me, I find it's if you can put it in a visual way, put it on some graphs and show kind of trends over time, that really helps people to kind of understand what's going on there. And you can see if there's spikes or declines in any particular period. Did something happen in that period? Like, did you change your prices on certain things and all of a sudden some product wasn't selling as much as it was before? Right. I think the other thing too is you always have to know what your competitors are doing. And so really understanding the market and what people are paying for similar products. And, if you can do it in a non sort of intrusive way, if you can do some mystery shopping, and just understand what your competitor's sales process is, what the product features they have are, and how you can sort of think about your own products and where you might want to make those sorts of improvements.
Yeah, I love that. And what I'm hearing too is that there's so much overlap between like the whole sales and marketing process and all of that and the finance piece that we all inherently know when we're in business, but we don't really think about how they integrate. And I'd love to hear about maybe talking about that a little bit more and sharing how that strategic planning of our finance piece can come into play, how we can think more proactively in terms of when we're setting up that strategic plan for what we're going to sell, how we're going to sell it, and who we're going to sell it to. How can we incorporate more effectively that financial planning?
Yeah, well, I think the place that it all comes together for me is really understanding your the goals that you have and how much you're spending as well to get that revenue. And so if you need to invest in product development or make some improvements or add to your sales team, and you don't know if you're going to have the money to do that because you don't understand what the rest of your income statement looks like, it's going to be really hard to justify making those investments. Right. But if you have a really good understanding of what you're spending and where you're spending your money, you can then go ahead and decide whether or not you want to make those investments. And then you can start to track what is the return on the investment? Did those investments actually make your products and services better and in a way that you thought it was going to, so that the next time you go and do it, you'll have better data to make decisions with.
I love that. With family businesses in particular, there's a hesitancy to take on debt or maybe outside equity, because you're keeping it in the family, and so sacred cows there and all that gets hard with managing that. So a lot of the growth is organic. So I'd love to hear more, kind of, if I could shift gears a little bit back to your story a little bit and why you got into the world of wanting to help small businesses. You were working for larger companies in the past, working in executive leadership for larger scale companies. What made you want to bring that world to the small business, and what can small businesses learn from those larger, big conglomerate organizations?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into it, right? I left the financial services company I was working for and really was going to take a little bit of a break because it had been pretty stressful. I was burnt out. And after a couple of months, I had friends and former colleagues calling me and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing over here. Can you come help? Do you have time? Can you give me some advice? And once I got into it, I really loved the hand-to-hand combat and blocking and tackling that you get with the small business, which is very different than in a large company where a lot of it, takes a lot of time to see your idea go through to implementation. But with a small business, you're working with a very small team and with the decision makers, and you make the decision and you can implement it immediately. And I really enjoyed seeing that aspect of the business sort of come to life for me. And so since then, I just sort of decided that that's really where I wanted to focus and really help the small business owners bring my experience working in larger organizations to that industry, really. Mm-hmm. And I think understanding how processes work and what does well managed look like? Like, what are the kinds of things, controls that you should have in your business? What are the risks that you should be looking out for? I think all of those things are focused on very highly in larger companies, and particularly in a large financial services company, but not necessarily in small businesses. And so having that perspective and saying, hey, did you think of this, or have you thought of looking at it that way, has really helped to sort of level up the game, the business management of the companies that I'm working with.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's a lot we can learn from larger companies that are doing it at a larger scale. Is there anything that you feel that, kind of looking back on your experience in that larger financial services company, what could they learn from the smaller business? What are we missing in those larger scale businesses?
So in my experience, there is a sort of reluctance to say no in large companies there's a reluctance to prioritize, right? Everything has to get done, like everything's a priority. And then you end up in this place where if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so you start to burn people out. But in small businesses, there truly is not enough resources to get everything done. And so you have to say no, you have to be very focused on your goal, and you have to prioritize. And I think if larger companies can really take that to heart, I think that you might see a lot more efficiency in the larger companies if they could really stop working on the 80% that is not going to actually make it through.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is a lot of times the larger company that we think is more efficient is not as efficient because they're focused on the wrong things and they're not saying no to the right things. Is that right?
Right. It's that they're trying to do too much all at once. Yeah. I spent so much time in prioritization conversations, and it's really hard because you literally have a list of like 150 projects that you want to get done. And how do you kind of fit that all in, this quarter, next quarter, this year? And you never really sort of cross things off the list. Like you never get that list down to 50 or 75 projects. Yeah. You just keep everything on the list, which creates this kind of stressful feeling of everybody that you're never going to get anything done. So, I think that is definitely something that could be done better in larger companies. And I'm sure there probably are some large companies that do it well. But just speaking from my experience, the other thing that I've seen too is that the smaller companies really celebrate their employees, and they recognize the role that they play in the employees' lives and livelihoods, and it's much more sort of tangible as opposed to being part of a big company where some companies are very good at recognizing their employees, but it feels more perfunctory as opposed to heartfelt.
Yeah, and that's an interesting kind. I'm glad you went there because there's I feel like, and maybe this isn't true, but I feel like at least with the smaller companies and family businesses in particular, that sense of wanting to take care of the employees also kind of puts maybe a hindrance on the ability to really objectively look at the financials or the data in the right way. And I guess what I mean by that is there's this artificial harmony that exists that says, well, he's a good guy. We'll, keep him there. I know, but they don't want to look deep to see the truth of the reality of the situation, and it might affect the people. How do you? I mean, I guess how does that hit you? How do we balance that when we're looking at trying to be more objective about addressing those financial issues with the people issues?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of the things that I really have a hard time with is people saying that everybody in their company is family. Now, in a family business, there's probably a lot of people that are part of the family, but there's a lot of people that aren't part of the family. And, you have to have that kind of focus that, if they're the company can't be a family. The company is a team, and you want the company to be a high performing team. And the only way that you can be a high-performing team is if you really take care of the people who are not performing. And it could be just a matter of having a conversation with somebody that, you think is a good performer, and you're noticing something's off, and you want them to, you want to help them. And so you want them to open up to you a little bit and realize they might be having a personal issue that's causing things to go wrong. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be empathetic and you shouldn't be, caring for your employees. But, I do think that there is that fine line between, if somebody isn't performing, they might be a nice person, but you still have to make the tough decision to take the action that you need to, because I think it doesn't do them justice if you just let them hang around and they're not being productive, they're not being fulfilled. There's something that's not working for them either. But if you both don't talk about it, and it just sort of festers, then it impacts the entire company, especially with smaller businesses where there might be, 10, 20, 50 employees. If somebody is not pulling their weight, it's much more noticeable than in a large company.
Yeah, that's a great point. I thinking about it that way where, if you're talking about one employee out of 10 employees, say in a small business, that's, 10% of your entire workforce. Whereas in a larger company with 10,000, that's a drop in the bucket kind of thing. You get to see how, I guess, larger companies more think of people as numbers. But I really like that point about family in business, and that's a big pet peeve of mine too, where we talk about everybody's family, there's enough different types of families out there that we know that there's dysfunctional families, there's some great families, there's some estranged families, that it's not always the greatest thing to be a family. So I love that you put it as a team, always working towards that same goal. I guess the question becomes then, thinking about it from the perspective of the small business versus the large business, is there a point where it's just too big then? I guess what I'm getting at is that you get to a point of maximum, effectiveness or efficiency and things start to kind of unravel a little bit, or maybe operate a little less efficiently, or you become more of a number. But is there that sweet spot where a business should be, and then what happens from there?
Yeah, and I don't think there's one answer for that. I think it all depends on what the goals of the business owner are. And, if they want to take it to that next level, it can continue to grow. And there are companies that are able to maintain their culture as they grow to larger organizations. I think you just need to make sure that you keep your eye on that North Star. Yeah. And really focus on that as you're growing, and make sure that you're making decisions that are in line with that as you're adding to your team, and making the organization larger.
Yeah, I like that perspective. There's maybe no right answer, and maybe it was kind of like that loaded question where trying to lead into what could be the best here, and I guess for a family business, there's never a right answer either. But when do you? I guess that question becomes like, well, when do you start to split off and have maybe a family enterprise instead of just a single business entity that maybe might be more risky? I guess there's the, we're talking about the kind of the overlap between the people and the finance too. Now we're getting more into the HR side of stuff. So I know that you have a history there. You advise on that. What can small businesses do better in with regard to their human resource management? I know you said that most small businesses love their people, but they might not treat them that way necessarily, right? In the right way. So what can we do better from an HR perspective to really treat the employees right?
Yeah, I think, it all goes back to the values, right? And if you're living up to your values, then I think that will be the right way to think about it, right? So if you, and that also gives the employees the opportunity to opt in, right? If they're not aligned with the values of the company, then, that probably isn't the right place for them to be either. But I think, so being clear in your values and being clear in what the company stands for, and being clear in your goals and the communication of it. I think the other thing too is expectations, right? Like you can't have expectations in your mind and not tell people that those are your expectations, because nobody's going to ever live up to them.
Yeah.
And so the more you can communicate clearly both your values, what you stand for, and what your expectations are, I think that's going to take care of the employees, because they will be able to opt in. They will understand what's important to you, and they will be able to help you deliver on that.
Do you see small businesses that are maybe failing in that direction, or maybe trying to do right, but they're not really grasping that, and maybe they're losing the culture from that respect? Do you run into that a lot, or?
Yes. And I think the reason why is because the CEO or the founder is running too hard to try and do everything themselves. And they don't actually have the ability to then step back and really focus on being the leader of the team. If they're the face of the company out to the customers, if they're leading product development, if they're worried about the strategy and the growth of the business, and they also have this sort of, everybody in the business is relying on them for their livelihood, that's a lot. And if they don't have a good support system, then it all is going to come crashing down at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that, because I think there's a lot of CEOs out there, and this is something that I kind of harp on with regard to family business owners and CEOs in general, because we get into the family business to really have because we love our families, and because we want to create a lifestyle for our families. But we often don't live those lifestyles because we're too busy being in the business, and then we're compromising our families because we're spending too much time in there. So I'd love to hear more about why CEOs may be doing that, and how we can start letting go of that responsibility, or delegating more to be able to find that peace and balance and love and lifestyle that we want in our business.
Yeah, I think that's so tough, right? And isn't it something that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis, right? Like we don't want to give up that control, especially if, it's a business that you've built from the ground up, and, you used to have to do everything in it because you were the only employee. And now that you've grown, like it's hard to kind of give up those responsibilities because nobody's going to do it just like you do it. And so I think at some point it's having peace with that and saying, okay, I know that they're not going to do it just how I do it, but they're going to find their own way to do it. I think the other thing is, if you focus on the outcome and have really clear goals, like, we have a revenue goal, we have a net income goal, we have a customer satisfaction goal. And if you know that your team is achieving those outcome goals, it doesn't really matter how they got there. I mean, provided that they're doing it in accordance with the values and, legally and all those sorts of things. But like it, you have to be able to let the team get to that point. And, it's scary the first time you do it. But then if you do that, it might actually turn out better than you ever imagined it would. Yeah.
Well, I know from my experience, it does. You do have that perspective of, well, I can either it's like I can do it myself and I just know how to do it now and I don't want to delegate it, or it's like, well, I fear that I might lose my relevance in this company, or maybe they do it better and now I don't have a role. And now what do I do? There's a lot of that, like, too. I think there's that psychological kind of challenge there. And I, kind of looking at your, your bio and all of the things you're involved in: Strategic, Board Collective, Pillar One Consulting, Clipper Share Ventures. There's a lot you're doing as well. So how are you finding that balance within, your companies? How are you delegating? What systems do you have in place to make sure that you can do all of that and be effective?
Well, it's tough because everything's at a different stage in its life cycle. And so, sometimes things take up more time than others. And so I think that's a part of it, is that if everything is hitting all at once, then, that certainly is a tough week to get through. But then managing priorities and being really clear with folks that I'm working with, hey, this week is focused on this piece over here. I can focus on this other piece next week, and making sure that I'm communicating to all my partners, clients, et cetera, of where I'm spending my time, and also focusing on the outcomes again.
Yeah.
They know that I'm delivering on what I said I'm going to do. And so, they understand that it's not necessarily I'm working on their stuff from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on a particular day, but it's going to get done when it needs to get done because we've agreed to those outcome commitments.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice, especially for, I think, those that are running multiple things, multiple brands, multiple businesses. It's always fascinating to see people are doing so many things like yourself and how you're delegating and making that work. So yeah, I kind of wanted to shift gears and ask a little bit now, get into kind of the fractional CFO side, since that's also, something that you provide as well. And I'm always interested. This is something that I'm a fan of as far as for small businesses in particular, for the very reasons we talked about, that a lot of people just think of it as an afterthought. But fractional CFO is one of the better ways, I believe, to get the benefit of a CFO, but not have to pay for the a high end thing and have it in house if you're not ready for that. So, at what point do companies really need that fractional CFO, or should they be looking at that?
Yeah, I think when companies are super small, really what you need is a very good bookkeeper / controller.
Right.
And the point at which you need a fractional CFO is when you start looking forward to the future. So I always think of the bookkeeper or controller as the person or group of people that are going to make sure that all the data is correct, and they're sort of looking backwards. What did you spend? What did you make? Those sorts of things. The fractional CFO is going to come in and help you look forward. So where are you going, and what is it going to take to get there?
Interesting. So so when you're getting into that strategic thinking mindset, and more so than just, I'm guessing that strategic thinking is more so than just vision, like, hey, I want to build a multi-million-dollar company, but more to the ground level of like, what is the plan on how we're going to get there, the specific plan, how are we going to finance it and things like that. Is that right?
Yep. What needs to be true in order to achieve that goal? So thinking about, like, do you need financing? Do you need to raise capital? Do you need to talk to a bank and get a loan? Even validating, like, is that even possible?
Yeah.
Like, what are the products? What do the customers want? Is there a big enough market for what you want to sell before you even go to funding sources? Because that's the first question they're going to ask you is, are you sure that people are going to buy this thing that you want to sell?
Yeah. So will the fractional CFO or will that CFO help you to walk through those processes? Like if you've got some traction under your belt, you've sold some things locally, and you've got the bookkeeper, you've worked that through, you have some history. Will they help you kind of walk through that strategic planning process? Is that what your services do?
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be anywhere from walking through the whole strategic planning process, using tools like SWOT analysis. So if you're familiar with that, it's where you go through your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities and your threats. And you look at that on a coherent basis. And then you can take that and decide how you're going to set up your business to grow in the way you want it to. And if you have somebody else on your team that is really good at that, the fractional CFO would sort of help with that process, but then really focus on the financials, the forecasting. So looking at, the market size and what your average sales size is, right? So if you want to make $1 million and your average sales ticket is $10,000, you have to sell a certain number of units. If it's $100,000, you have to sell many less units. And so kind of figuring that back into then what's it going to take to get there? How many salespeople do you need? How many customer service people do you need? All of those sorts of aspects of it. I
gotcha. Okay. And I'm curious to know, from your perspective and what you've heard in working with different companies, different small businesses, what questions do we need as CEOs? What questions do we need to be asking our CFO that we're not asking? Or are there questions that we aren't asking that we need to ask?
Well, I think one of the really important questions are, what metrics should you be managing to? So it's not just, revenue and net income, but there are other metrics that as a business you might want to be managing to. And so your CFO can help you set up those key performance indicators and track them on a regular basis. I think that's a really important part for the CFO to play. And then I think just asking them around what should your funding strategy be? Right? Where are you going to get money from? And cash flow, thinking about your cash flow. And then also, if you happen to have cash in the bank, if you're in that lucky position, what is your investment strategy? So, do you want to keep that cash readily available? Should you invest some of it? How do you plan for the long term? Where are you going to use that money?
I love that. So just to kind of summarize that, we should be asking what metrics should we be managing to get to where our goals are, and what should our funding sources be? Like, where should we find our funding, and then what should our investment strategy be? Those are really the three primary questions. Awesome,
absolutely,
that's great. So, tell me about Strategic Board Collective and kind of the projects you're working on here, because I know that from the standpoint of our company, we have a board of directors. The board of directors is very helpful, but there's so much power behind a board of advisors, or a board that can advise you on specific strategic initiatives, and that seems to be kind of what you're setting up here. And I'd love to hear about that and how you're helping your small businesses that you're engaging with.
Yeah, so you're really lucky that you do have a board of directors with your company, because I think a lot of companies don't have that. And, when you're the CEO, you can't really debate these issues with people on your team, right? And so, in some ways you can, but there are certain strategic issues and certain, worries and thoughts that you would have as a CEO that you wouldn't necessarily want to bring your team into the fold on. And so what we're doing is we're creating a cohort of business owners that can come together and share their issues with each other and help each other by brainstorming and doing some strategic planning and really bringing all of their collective experience to bear. And, it's likely that somebody else has gone through a problem that you're seeing in your business. How did they solve it, and how can you apply that to your business? Or just all learning together and growing your business together and holding each other accountable, right? Like who holds the CEO accountable? You can hold your team accountable, but who's holding you accountable? And so it's really getting that brain trust to help you and to be a partner with you as you grow your business.
I love that. I mean, because there's so much. I mean, there's value behind a board, especially, board that you may have people within the organization, executives, owners, and everybody kind of giving feedback and holding the CEO accountable. But from the standpoint of that's an in the bubble kind of thing. So the standpoint of outside of the bubble, having that cohort, I can't talk about enough. And we were in kind of the same community for a while for helping, build our brands, and the power of a community, of a cohort that is focused on the same thing, where you can get some mentorship. There's so much power behind that. And what kind of companies are you looking for that you'd like to engage with on that, or who may want to engage with you?
Yeah, we're looking for business owners that have had a little bit of experience. So, their current business doesn't have to be of a certain size, but they should be, an experienced business owner and somebody who's looking to grow. So you have big growth goals and you don't quite know how you're going to achieve it on your own. So it wouldn't be for the business owner that's sort of just riding out the wave and staying static with where they are. It's really that growth mindset.
I love that. So they've had some success and they want to get it to the next level. They don't know how to do that, and that's where Strategic Board Collective steps in and helps with that process. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're also running Pillar One Consulting, where you're helping helping business leaders, small businesses with other consulting through finance and accounting, HR, things like that. Anything you'd like to share there as far as how people can reach out to you and when they might want to contact you, like what pain points they might be having?
Yeah, so Pillar One is a collection of folks, and my expertise is in finance, and we have HR experts and marketing experts really looking to help small businesses in those domains and answering questions and solving problems for them. And so really, it could be anybody from, like I was saying earlier, brand new startup business. You have an idea, maybe you incorporated your company or you've developed your product, but you don't really know what to do next. Then all of our kind of expertise can come together and help you kind of get it off the ground. Or it could be somebody who has been in business. It's a similar company to the Strategic Board Collective, right? Somebody who has been in business that wants to grow, that needs expertise in finance, HR, or marketing.
Excellent. So it's just, it's a more targeted consulting practice. I love
working
that. Yeah.
in the day-to-day business with you, as opposed to being in that like board of advisors, board of directors role.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's taking the strategic and going into the tactical on the day-to-day. I love it. That's so great that you have that kind of all-encompassing approach to that. And where can people reach out to you as far as if they want to get in touch with the Strategic Board Collective, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to engage on how to join that community, how would you like them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think I'll give you one email address that's easy for folks to remember, and then I can kind of filter them to different places. So It's Cheryl at pillar1cfo.com.
At pillar1cfo. Okay, so that's Cheryl with a Y.
Yes.
And 2 L's.
No, 1 L.
Oh, 1 L. I'm sorry. 1 L.
1 L in my name.
Yes. Oh, Cheryl. Oh, yeah, yes.
And 2 L's in pillar.
So I just confused everyone. Yeah. So it's CHERYL at pillar1cfo.com. All right, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your time with us today. I know we just scratched the surface on so many of the major topics that are baffling a lot of small businesses, especially in the world of finance. And there's so much deeper we can go. But that's why you have companies like Strategic Board Collective and Pillar One Consulting to help with that. So I would encourage you, if you're listening, reach out to Cheryl, get involved in these communities, level up your business to the next level. You've already got to where you are with what you've got now. Take it to the next level. And yeah, Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your wisdom.
It's been great.
Thanks. And to everyone out there, if you enjoyed this episode or if you feel like somebody else needs to hear this, please share it with them. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Fearless Family Business Show. If you're enjoying this show, please thumbs up this episode and subscribe wherever that subscribe button is. And you'll get more family business education and insights in your inbox. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, your mom, your dad, a second cousin, whomever you think might benefit from hearing this show. And if you're in a family business and you've got a great story to share, contact me because I would love to see if you'd be a great fit for this show. I'd love to interview you. Or if you're struggling in your family business to find your unique identity or voice, or you need an injection of new life into your family business, I'd also love to hear from you. I'd love to learn more about you, and I'd love to see if I can help. Simply email me at adam@fearlessfamilybusiness.com, and we'll get you connected to the right place. Together, we can elevate the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle we all experience in our family businesses. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.